Welcome to the Get Zoned In podcast, the official podcast of Zone Sports Academy. I'm your host, Duke Baxter. Each week, we will help educate and motivate you so that you can dominate the game of life on and off the field. We will introduce you to players, coaches, and professionals covering all aspects of the great game of baseball and softball. So if you're ready to get zoned in, let's go. We are here with Justin Rabinowitz. I coached Justin when he was 13 years old. He went to Bridgewater High School. He was a baseball and football player. Took him to the chiropractic side of business, and he now started his own business, Strive2Move. We're super excited to have Justin on the show. Here we go. Justin Rabinowitz is here from Strive2Move. I trained Justin when he was 13 years old, so we were kind of calculating the numbers, and 20 years ago was when we first started working together with the bat and the glove. Justin, thanks so much for being on the episode.
Appreciate you having us. Full circle here.
Full circle. So can you give us a little background about yourself? You grew up in Bridgewater. Did you have any brothers or sisters? What was it like growing up in the Rabinowitz household?
Yeah, I older sister, 5 years older. So by the time we met, my sister was already in college, and my world went to Bridgewater High School, revolved around around sports. Like you, football and baseball player through high school, baseball player in college. In high school, I had a back injury, broke my back playing football my senior year, which basically held me out through most of the football season, and I was back for that senior year of baseball. But that shaped my career because going to college, I had a chance to potentially play one or play both, and that made me specifically play baseball, in college. So it kind of made that choice for me, but that's where my journey started.
Can you talk a little bit to the people listening about the importance of, you said you played football and baseball. So many people are specializing at a sport so early, and you being a chiropractor, you working with tons of athletes and adults, kids. Can you talk a little bit about your feelings and thoughts on being a multi-sport athlete? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you of all people, because it's very easy for you to not say that. You have a business that revolves around one thing, but knowing you as a person, that you're going to do what's best for the athlete long term, and what's going to make a better baseball player is going to be a better athlete, right? And so the more well-rounded you have, we don't want good baseball players. We'd rather have a good athlete that becomes a good baseball player. So you and I know you were a quarterback in high school, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you focused on baseball at one point, now you had all that athleticism, all that toughness, all that team building, and then you, at some point after high school, you transferred it to playing one sport. And, at the end of the day, I would always rather have a kid that's a great athlete, and then eventually when he gets 16, 17, 18, college, pick the sport. And now how much better is he going to be, because now he's actually focused on that one sport. And then obviously the whole injury thing, which is another topic I know we'll talk about. That's a whole other aspect of this for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about injury. You said you were, in high school you got injured, and then in college you got injured. How did that help shape you wanting to go into chiropractic? And, can you talk a little bit about that? Like when did you know that, you kind of hang up the spikes, right? Like every athlete has that day that they kind of dread, and they never know when it's going to be, that the game's kind of over. But I think the cool thing with you and what you do is the game itself might be over, but you're still in the game. Yeah. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah. People always ask me how I got into it, and I always say I had two options. I was either going to do what I do now, or I was going to be a coach and a teacher. Like that, it was one of two. And the thing I chose to do in the medical side, I knew I always wanted to have some relationship still with athletics and sports, just because it's always been the environment I'm most comfortable in. And, as we spoke about before, the lessons that I learned far exceeded any lessons I learned in the classroom. When I got to college, I actually, tore my labrum sliding into home. Scored the winning run though.
Good.
Scored the winning run, but that I had a decision to make. I could have had surgery and come back for my senior year, or I could have said, listen, don't have to have surgery. I'll probably be okay as long as I'm not throwing the ball hard, and kind of stop after my junior year. And I chose to do that. Now, if you had asked me when I was training here through high school, if I ever would have given up a year,
Right.
Never in a million years would I have thought that that would have been my career path. I mean, I always knew that I thought I wanted to finish it out. But at some point, 21, 22, I was like, listen, what's going to be this process? And potentially it's time to move on. Now, luckily I had a path that I was going towards, but I mean, we've seen it a lot of times. Some people don't, even at the, smaller school level, people still think pro baseball might be their career. I never had those illusions for me that it was going to be the next 25, 30 years of my life. So I knew there would be another option there.
So once that happened and you knew you wanted to, did you know you wanted to be a chiropractor right then and there? Was that always the path you wanted, or do you wanted to be in some type of medical field or?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Growing up, when I went to the chiropractor, I always envisioned myself doing it. I liked that it was a doctor's office, but it wasn't that typical white coat environment. There was a family feeling. It was a nice atmosphere. And when I went as a kid, when I left, I always felt better. Now, it's interesting because what I do now in the sports medicine world is way expanded than the chiropractic treatment that I got. We do a lot of rehab. I do a lot of sports conditioning, things of that nature. So I've been able to expand upon that using my background. But I like the idea of, we talk about entrepreneurship and most chiropractors do own their own business. So I like the idea of being in medicine and then also having the ability to own my own business, which is how it's turned out for me.
Well, looking at Strive2Move and looking at the Instagram and all the social media, it looks like you and your staff have a lot of fun. And it looks like you took the you being a captain in college and you now being a captain of your company. It seems like you've really built a culture that's team oriented and it seems like it's been a lot of fun.
And I talk to them about a lot. I literally bring out what they should look for when they should leave our company, and not in a bad way. Like, I want it to be an environment that people want to be in. And we literally talk about, if this happens, if you get to a point where you don't think you want to be here, like, I'll help you find something else. But almost to the point of, like, I want you to want to be here. If you're dragging your feet and you're walking in and I dread coming to work, like, life is too short. And it's not, we spend how many hours, 50, 60, 70 hours. Who wants to do that and be miserable doing it? It's not worth it. It is not worth it.
So let's start talking about some of the things that you see and some of the challenges from an injury standpoint. Obviously we're an overhand throwing profession, baseball, softball, and there's a lot of arm injuries, and it's on the increase. What are some things that you see, and how can we prevent some of those things? We're very careful when we do our pitch counts and we follow the MLB Pitch Smart, and we have a lot of protocols on our teams. But what are some things that you see in your world?
I think the first thing is what we already talked about, is encouraging kids to do more than one thing, right? So that they have other abilities, whether it is, I know you guys added sports training here and weightlifting, which I know those guys well, and they do an awesome job. At a minimum that, but at a maximum, potentially doing another activity in the off season, just so that it doesn't become like one thing all year round, so that they can move in a different direction, so that they're not always, right hand swing, right hand throw, that they are maybe shuffling laterally on the basketball court, or they're gaining stability and strength by doing another activity. So that is one thing, is having them do other things other than just pitching and throwing all year round. So that's a primary.
What are some of the things that they can do? I think we talked a little bit about, the importance of, as an athlete, just being honest and being truthful to those around you. And I mean, if I'm going to pitch for my middle school coach and then on Friday, and now I have a game for my travel team on Saturday, talking and communicating about that, because pitchers only have so many throws in their arm.
Yeah.
And some kids are afraid to tell their coach, well, I don't want to tell them I just threw yesterday. Well, if they don't know, and you threw 70 pitches yesterday, and this guy throws you 90 pitches today, like, that's where the overuse happens. And I think being honest and educating the parents to know, like, hey, it's, what comes first, and let's just keep an open dialogue so that we can keep you safe.
I think if you look at the highest level, obviously major league, minor league, college, none of those guys are playing on two teams at one time. There's a reason for that. They have one protocol, even if at the major league level we disagree with what pitch count and all that they're using, at least one person is in charge and we know what's going on. But to your point, if you're on the middle school team and they ask you to come close the game, and then you play for your club team on the weekend, and then, you do a showcase 4 days later, now, you've got people potentially trying to do the right thing that don't have all the information, that don't have all the facts. And so if no one is holding it all together for you and you're not being honest, like, it doesn't matter what protocol you follow because you have 3 different people trying to do 3 different things.
What are some of the things that you see that you'd like to be able to prevent, and how can we prevent it with some of the youth athletes that you see? What are some of the most common things that you see? I
think the first thing is the multiple teams thing. That's gonna crush you, right? If you're pitching on 2 to 3 teams or 2 teams at once, you're gonna have an issue. And the people that need to be most careful about this is always the best player, right? Because when you're the best player, every coach wants to win and wants to use you. Right. So if you're a kid, then you're one of the better players on the team. You've got to be even more careful. How many times we see the guy pitches and then he plays shortstop and then he plays third and then he comes back to catches. We see that type of stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. So being aware of, especially if you are one of the better players, you have to be even more careful with it. I think the other part, which again I know you've added here, is a really solid strength and conditioning program, because there's nothing that can replace fundamental strength and movement, right? You're not going to get stronger in your body by running laps, and you're not going to get strong by throwing more pitches. You'll build arm strength, but to get the core and the hips and all of that type of stuff involved, that's how you're going to build a base so that you can do all the other things. The other thing about working out, and it doesn't have to be heavy weights, doesn't have to be anything crazy, is that it builds we call it like armor. It's like body armor, right? Like if you add a little bit of a strength and a little bit of muscle, you've given yourself a little bit of body armor, so that when either you get hit wrong or you're running into something, or you're playing in a double header, you've got something behind you. I wasn't a kid that ever had to worry about being too skinny, but a lot of the kids that need to gain some weight, the diet with the fitness component of it and the exercise is huge.
Can you talk a little bit about the hydration? I feel like there's often times where kids will have a double header, and they'll go to the first game, and in between games we're eating a hamburger and French fries, and almost like, I need my energy. But the energy that they're giving themselves is a moon pie and an RC. It's not really going to fuel up anything. The old soccer, they bring the oranges and bananas, and the kids aren't going to die if they don't have 2,000 calories in between games. What is something that's nutritional that can really help them?
Well, a lot of times the answers are in the basics, right? So as a general rule of thumb, this is like 24 ounces of water here. We basically say half your body weight in ounces. So if this is 24 ounces and a guy weighs 150, you could do the math, 70 something. So that's 3.5 of these per day. Now, I guarantee if we started by looking at, the first 50 kids that walk in here tonight, 0 of them are getting anywhere close to that. And to your point, they're not the sexy answers, but sleep and hydration. Our kids are super motivated. They're in school, they're going to practice, and they're coming home and doing homework till 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. They're waking up at 6. They're getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep, and they're drinking a third of their body. And again, those answers, no one likes those because they're boring.
Right.
But if we did those pretty well, I guarantee a lot of those injuries would happen. Another point, which is interesting, do you know when the most injuries in NFL training camp happen?
Spring training.
Day 3 of NFL practice. You know why? That's the first day they measure where everyone's hydration level starts to drop. Soft tissue injuries, right? Hamstring pulls, groin pulls, arm strains, all that type of stuff.
Going to some football games, some high school games, I'm seeing so many kids cramping.
Yep.
I'm like, man, I don't remember any of us like cramping.
Yeah.
Like now it's like guys are coming off the field left and right with cramping, and I'm like, man, like how do you prevent? Is it water? It's being dehydrated?
There's so many different things, potassium, magnesium, but again, all of that is secondary to hydrate the water, right? I think any of those kids that are cramping, if they were doing that correctly, then we could have a conversation. Do you have a magnesium deficiency? Is there something else going on nutritionally? But if we don't start there, we're going to be struggling. Right? I talked to a bunch of cross country kids last week, and here's a group that, they run 7, 8, 10. They're running for over an hour a day. So not in someone that wasn't running, they would still want half their body weight in ounces. And I'm talking to these kids, and they're lucky to get a bottle of water in a day. So we start talking about anything other than just starting there, we're beating around the bush.
So is there some type of food that can help in between games? Like, is it just something as simple as having an orange and a banana, or do they need to have a Whopper with fries? What do they need to have? And the kids that are then get all, you're looking, you're like, dude, what did you just eat? Like, you don't need to eat that to play one more 1.5 hour game. Like, nothing's gonna happen to you.
I'm more of a fan. I think the big thing that sucks the water out of people a lot of times is like that fried greasy stuff. And so if you're getting someone that has a difference between a grilled chicken sandwich and a fried chicken sandwich, but that's just basic, right? If you want to have the fried chicken, wait till the game's over. Like, but in between games, that's it's too heavy to be sitting like that. The other part of it too is, if the people listening to this podcast, your athletes want to be high-level athletes, they're the ones that have to pay attention to their body and be honest with themselves. Because what we're finding out now nutritionally is that there is no one protocol, right? Your body's different than my body. And so you have to pay attention to what works for you. Hey, listen, if there's a kid that drinks a Gatorade and has a candy bar in between games and he legitimately feels good, listen, we know it's not the best thing, but if he feels okay, that's one thing. But I was the guy, if I did that, I'd be sleeping by the third inning. There is an amount of individualism that matters here. So someone may respond well to the fruit, and someone may respond well to just a protein shake. I know about myself now. I never was a breakfast guy. I thought I was supposed to eat it. Now there's a lot of research saying maybe not. I don't need it. I don't do it. That's just me. Now my wife wakes up, she's starving in the morning. Different, right? But if your athletes are coming in and saying, I want to be a serious athlete, the more that they start to pay attention to actually what makes them feel good and ready to go and what doesn't, that's when you start to gain that little edge, which might be the difference between getting thrown out at second and not. Because we're not talking big things here. It's bang, bang, and the higher level you go, the more the small details matter. Now,
do you see when you give them certain protocols to get themselves better, being lucky enough to have trained you back in the day, you're a hard worker, you would, it wasn't normal. You'd have your normal practice, but then you'd come here and train 3 times a week. You were sweating every day, getting your extra, you're hitting in, you're fielding in, you're catching in, and doing your drills. Do you see the kids that are coming into your office? Are they doing the small things? So many kids want a quick fix, like they just want it to be better right now. All right, do this, and okay, Justin just did this to me, now I'm okay. Instead of, well, you have to do these 5 exercises every day, and then over time you're gonna be healthy. It's like the whole, I have a sore arm, but I wait until it's hurt to then rehab it. But then once it's better, I stop doing those same exercises.
Exactly. Yeah. What we find with people, we take a little bit of a different approach in that it's very easy to say, here's the arm protocol, you do these 7 exercises. Now, as you found out, as I know, most people aren't going to do them. And so we take the approach of, we spend a lot of time doing a very detailed assessment for somebody so that potentially we could find the 1 or 2 that are more valuable. Because if I can give someone 1 to 2 things, more likely they're going to do those than giving them 7 to 8 that may or may not be working. We had a lady last week with foot pain, and on her intake form, she wrote, I'll do whatever it takes to get better. And then 2 sentences below, she said, the doctor gave me exercises and I'm not really doing them. And I was like, wait, you just said you're doing whatever it takes to get better. And it wasn't that she wouldn't do whatever it takes. It's that intellectually she didn't believe that the exercise they gave her were going to work. And so if we give something to somebody, we want to do the best we can to say, this is what's going to fix your problem. However, a lot of the times if you're changing someone's swing out there, I'm working with somebody, there's a little bit of, in the beginning, faith without results. You try to make a big change in someone's swing, it may get worse before it gets better. And now it's like having a little bit of faith that this is what I need to do and not just go back to the old thing that's gotten me through. So there is a lot of psychology behind giving people, something and being, trusting that process, so to speak.
So it says here that you were also certified strength and conditioning, the NSCA.
Yeah.
So you went through the whole process
Yeah.
of getting some certification. So you have a lot of initials after your name.
Yes, yeah, but I mean more so than that. And truthfully, I haven't even renewed it, so no one can get false advertising here. But I've done that. I had that for years and years.
Right.
I learned more from being an athlete, and then that just kind of gave me the letters. Right. But I mean, I started working out in 8th grade. Mm-hmm. So now I've been training more than I haven't been training. Right. And I've trained with a lot of high level trainers as an athlete, and even now as an adult, I'm training 3 to 4 days a week. Have legitimate programming for myself. I have people writing it for me. The guys over at Pratt who are now working with you guys here, I work out with them. My wife works out with them. So I've been involved, and I've learned more from experimenting with myself and seeing how certain programs feel. And so that's the biggest part too. Again, it's much easier for you to coach someone in baseball because you've done the whole thing, right? You've been through it. You played a couple sports, you understand. So yeah, a lot of the letters after your name are, they're great and they're good things to have. But my experience of understanding and learning and also I think having a physical practice of learning new things with my body, just like I tell patients when I'm teaching them a new movement, it's the same thing. I just started taking golf lessons. And part of it is so that mentally I'm going through the process of figuring something out with my body so that I can understand when a patient doesn't understand how to deadlift or to hip hinge, that I'm there with them because I'm learning the same thing.
Right. I think that's important to, you're talking about trusting the process. Everyone just wants to just get the prize. They just want the end result. That's it. And they don't want to put in the work of what it actually takes to get to that.
Yeah.
And we talk about that a lot and with our athletes, and everybody just wants to be a Division I athlete. That's it. Yeah. Like you said, you went to Ramapo. That doesn't mean that you couldn't have played at possibly a Division I school.
Yeah.
And it's just the road that we take, but sometimes it's just you get so stuck on that one thing that you just can't get it out of your mind until you either achieve it or you don't, but then that's not the end of the road either.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I think, and I talk with a lot of my athletes about the Division I, II, and III thing, and there's so much to that. Like you said, I played Division III, but I was at a point where I was like, I could play Division I, and I would see my friends here and their Division I.
Right.
I actually, interesting story, I played in a summer league down the shore. It was a mix in the college, Division I, II, and III kids, and our coach, he coached Seton Hall, and then he coached Division III, and he always said to us, if I had to pick a team for tomorrow, I'd pick a Division III All-Star team. If I had to pick a team for 3 years from now, I'd pick the Division I guys that are here. He's like, because a guy like me who's 5'9", 190, like, it's what I am.
Right.
But he's like, there's a guy who's playing first base like you, or who's 6'3", 220, and he might not be as good of a hitter as you now, but he also could, if he figures it out, he's got a lot more
projectability.
But at that day, probably not much of a difference. If not, some of the other guys are better. And so but again, there's a lot of nuance to that. There's a lot of nuance to that. And I talk to my athletes about obviously the college experience, but more so, what do you want to get out of it? Like, if you're that person like I was, Division III, Division II, low-level Division I always say be careful going to that low-level Division I that might go 5-37, because I don't care what level you're at, it is no fun losing that many games.
Right.
And if I had give anyone advice, it's like, go to a team potentially where you may play and could win and be a part of something. But I know that's getting off topic, but I think it's important to.
Well, I think that is very important though, because we have a ton of athletes that we do have those same conversations. It's about educating them as much as possible. It's not about, being 15 years old and playing on the 17U team as fast as you can. It's like, well, what happens when you're 16U?
Yeah.
Well, there is no 21U team, so you play 17U again, and okay, well, now you're actually 17 and you're playing 17U again. It's like, it feels like you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So don't rush the process. Of just make sure that it feels right and that it is right, and that you have a plan for your journey, but don't rush it too fast.
Well, I think also studying some of the better athletes that I've done from a health perspective and also from a performance perspective, and you start to see trends that you may not have always thought were true. So the one, Christian Pulisic, who's on the number one soccer player in America, his parents elected to keep him more local rather than sending him away to the USA team, and he was a stud growing up. And what they said is that actually helps him now because he was always the guy. It forced him to figure it out. Whereas like if he was on the USA team, he would have been one of the guys. So in his case, potentially he learned ball skills, or he learned something that he may not have learned otherwise because he didn't do the typical route and go.
Right.
So again, there's an argument on each side. But to your point, it's like, what are you chasing? There's no U22 team.
Right.
And even the guy around here who's my age, Todd Frazier, Little League World Series champ.
Right.
He was a 3-sport athlete through high school. Then he stopped football after his freshman year and was still a 2-sport athlete in high school. And there's a guy that like picks up any sport. And, I know him through mutual friends. I mean, that guy could do anything because he was
ping pong, bocce ball. It doesn't matter.
Golf, legit. Like he can do all of it. And so you see that from who essentially he's probably the best person in this state that's my age that's actually still playing Major League Baseball. And you look at his journey, and it wasn't just baseball from the time he was 8. It was being an athlete.
So for all the people listening and watching, how can they find Justin Rabinowitz? How can they find you on social media? Yeah.
So like you said, we try to have a lot of fun on social media with our business at Strive2Move, STRIVE, the number 2. And then move, and you could do that on Instagram, on Facebook. We're not really on Twitter right now. And then personally, my name, Justin Rabinowitz. I have personal profile on Instagram and Facebook where I'm most active, which we post a lot of stuff like that and a lot of athletic stuff. And so those are the main places you can find me.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we close up? Is there any other messages that you'd like for those listening to get out of this podcast?
I mean, I think it's important to talk about what we spoke about before we came on of, one of the things we promote is like sports teaches lifelong lessons, and a place like this, Zoned, where my career, however successful I've been at the age I am, a lot of the habits that I formed were things that I let success leaves clues, I think, right? When I was 13 and 14, I was doing the same thing I'm doing now. It just was in a different form. So when I was 14, 13, 15, like you said, I would come in and do extra work, but I enjoyed it. I loved putting in the extra work. I loved growing and learning. And it was an investment. Again, at the time, my parents did it, but my dad said to me one time, he said, the reason why we brought you to hitting lessons is one time you came home and you said, Dad, I know it's expensive, but I really want to get better at this. And he's like, because you understood the value of it, it was something that I wanted to do. Now I'm 33 and I own my own business, and I'm growing and learning every day. I'm paying to be in mastermind groups and business groups and taking courses and seminars. And so all I've done is transfer it. I'm not an athlete anymore, but I've just transferred that same kind of mindset that I had when I was 14 into what I'm doing now. And so, if parents or kids out there, like, the things that your kids do now and the habits they form when they're 15 potentially is going to be what they're going to be when they're 40 and when they're 45. So
pretty much never stop learning.
It doesn't matter what it is. It's a habit. You got to form the habit of growing. And so my staff ask me a lot of times, what should I read or what podcast should I listen to? And I always say, like, just get in the habit of doing it, and then we could figure out the details of it later. Right. Just get in the habit of wanting to learn and grow. Make it, become addicted to growth and learning. And then from there, I could change business tomorrow and I'll want to do the same thing. You could bring me in here and I want to learn all the new hitting stuff. I'm thinking about all these new things that I didn't know and I would just go into that. You bring me as a high school football coach tomorrow, I would go and I would do that. It doesn't matter what it is, it's the mindset. So I think that those are habits that you'll create, when you're 12, 13, 14. So don't forget that.
Right. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super good. Appreciate having you.
Full circle.
Yes, it is.